Brakati Yahweh, Brakati Yahushai, Brakati Yahweh, Brakati Yahushai, Brakati Yahweh, Brakati Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rachakwadash, that belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone drew well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim, the Sadakim, that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the pre-Shaman, this week's topic is going to be a response to Dave Chappelle's closer and a little bit called Space Jews. Alright, so this one says part two, but if you haven't already seen the comedy special, brothers are circulating the part about the space Jews. So spoiler alert, okay. There's two bits. There's one topic, but he has two bits. One at the beginning of the show and one towards the end, speaking about space Jews. In the first part, pretty much he's saying that UFOs, there's been a lot of UFO sightings, right? And he said, what if it's people from the distant future that figured out time travel and live on another planet. When the planet goes to shit, they come back to Earth, and then inside of them is space Jews. So in that first part, he's talking about the angels. All right, the angels are so-called black men. Okay, whether this guy knows it or not, he is a lesser luminary, Dave Chappelle. All right. What the way he's putting the gag together could also be like an allegory for what the so-called Jew has done throughout the world, which is pretty much they call themselves being enslaved in Egypt and all that. Now they're enslaved in the world. So there's a little double entendre there. For both scenarios, we're going to go through it with the scriptures. First and foremost, all right, that whole time traveling, um, Jews from the future. Um, the scriptures don't say that. The scriptures don't say that his brothers in the future in the chariots. All right. Um, at least to our knowledge, we don't know if that's the case. All right. As far as the Bible goes, okay, it's the angels of the Lord. Okay, because there is situations where the Most High did manipulate time. In the time of Hezekiah, um, added years to his life. Okay, and put the time backwards and had the time stand still. If the sun stands still, time stands still because our time is governed by the sun and the moon. That's in the book of Genesis, the first chapter. All right. So there is instance where the Most High had time been manipulated through our history, and there is instance where he's had men travel through space. Right. What Esau calls a wormhole. That's in the book of is it Bel and the Dragon? Pretty much, you had the prophet Habakkuk. The angel took him through what I could only describe as a wormhole. From one, he went from Judah to Babylon in a matter of seconds, right? So he traveled through space, okay, from one point in space to another point in space, okay, on a non-linear path. I mean, okay, like a wormhole is the best way I could describe it. So there is situations where there's time manipulated in the scriptures. There's a situation where there's space manipulated in the scriptures. But to say that we in the chat like this is our future selves in them chariots, all right? That's not, the scriptures don't say that. In fact, the scriptures tell you. Let's go to it real quick. I'm gonna go right off the bat that the angels of the Lord, that's their vehicles of a means of transportation. There's tons of scriptures in that, like at the book of Ezekiel. But the first one I'm gonna go to that comes to my mind is the book of Psalms. Psalms 104 and 3, right? So the book of Psalms, chapter 104, verse 3. It says, one second. This is the book of Psalms 104 and 3. Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariots. Right, so the clouds, all right, is code name for what you call UFOs in today's time, unidentified flying objects. However, they are identified. They are identified as the chariots of Israel. It says, who walketh upon the wings of the wind. Right, so there's another one in the book of Second Kings. Second Kings 2:11, I believe. Let's go right to it. That the chariots, all right. Because you have to understand, back in the ancient world, there was no chariots that was in the air. They didn't have any. Like in our time, we have chariots that are operating in the air. Like you got airplanes, you got helicopters, so on and so forth, drones. Esau even got his version of the UFOs, so-called like flying disc-shaped vehicles, man. The Nazis was working on it. There's pictures of it. So it's not a far fetched thing to hear about a vehicle in the air, but in the angel world, they didn't have the means or any types of chariots that could do that. So that's why I was talking about the chariots of the Lord, so-called UFOs, or the chariots of the Most High. Right? 2 Kings 2:11, and it came to pass as they went on and talked that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire and parted them both asunder. So it parted Elijah and Elisha asunder. All right, and if the chariots could emit some sort of like they could what you call like a tractor beam. They have tractor beams that could pull people up. All right, because that's how the Lord got pulled up. He got pulled up in a tractor beam. Okay, but this particular beam parted these men asunder. Okay, and by it says when it says fire, it means lights. Okay, um, they call the horses of fire because the chariots they light up. You know what I'm saying? Um, Horse also represents power. So if something has the capability of being in the air on its own, I'm talking about the chariots don't need fuel or break down and all that bullshit. That's what you call power. It says them both asunder, and Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. So how else would Prophet Elijah go up into heaven, man? There's only one way: a tractor beam from the so-called UFOs, all right, which are really the chariots of Israel. And Elisha's gonna call them by that name, verse 12. And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel. See? So we knew about them. All right? That's how come you have those Negro spiritual songs that when we were brought over here to serve slavery, Jake will sing songs like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, coming forth to take me home over the River Jordan. Why would slaves from Africa talking about chariots flying them home over the River Jordan? Because guess what? Those were not Africans, so-called. Those were Israelites scattered amongst the so-called Africans that was brought over here against their will, all right, in the tri-Atlantic slave trade to fulfill the prophecies in the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter. See, that's why Romans, the 8th chapter, says the spirit of self bear witness with our spirit that we're the children of the Most High, because all the prophecies that are in the book and in the Bible, it lines up with the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All the things that happen to us doesn't fit any other nation. All right, and a part of that is knowing that our history ties to what they call UFOs. All right, scriptures deal with it. It's a part of our history. All right, and the Most High, the Most High used the chariots in many ways throughout history, whether it's to intervene in wars, deliver His people, like the situation with Moses. Okay. It says, and he saw him no more, and he took hold of his clothes, his own clothes, and rent them in two pieces. Okay? So that's an incident right there of the chariots, man. Okay, now going into the fact that this guy said space Jews, we gotta understand, look, Jeremiah 14:2, I'm gonna read it. Judah mourneth, and the gates thereof languish. They are black. Hebrew word there for black is Kodara. So it's telling you that the Jews are black, or Kodar, which means dark skin. Onto the ground. The so-called Jew walking around today is nowhere close to dark skin. These are Edomites perpetuation a lie. All right, that they're the true people of the Lord when it's bullshit. All right, they're Khazars. All right, there's a book called 13 Tribe that goes all into it. Pretty much these Khazars adopted Judaism. All right, because there's a war between Christians and Muslims. Okay, between the Byzantines, all right, and the Muslims, and they couldn't pick a side, so they adopted Judaism. Okay, that's why they call themselves Jewish. See, when something is ish, it doesn't mean it's truly that thing. For instance, if somebody is childish, that don't mean that they're an actual child. They just have childlike behaviors. All right, so they call themselves Jewish because they're not the real Jews. It says, and the cry of Jerusalem is gone up. So when it talks about the gates that represents our leadership, there's no real leaders amongst you Negroes, Latinos, and Native. Well, primarily we're dealing with Judah, the Negroes. All right, there's no real leaders. Okay, and they're in languish. Our people are crying, man. All right, because they're in a fucked up situation. If you look at it, a lot of the tribes still have culture. You know what I mean? Like some sort of culture. Like the West Indians have their culture and their food and all that type of stuff. So does the Northern Kingdom. Whether you want to go from Ephraimites, Puerto Ricans, Simeonite, Dominicans, Mexicans, Issacharites, Gad, everybody sort of have a culture. But if you look at Judah, Judah really don't have no culture because not because like they're cultureless, like in the sense of they wouldn't have one, but they haven't given they weren't on no separate island to come up with their own things and nothing like that. They've just been beating the hell up from hundreds of years since they've been in America. That's why they eat shit like chitlins and grits. That ain't no culture. That was forced upon them, man. That was the part of the animal that you fed to the slaves, and then our people, the Negroes, all right, our people, Judah, all right, adopted that. So it's like Judah being the head tribe got a hard drink, all right, of Deuteronomy 28 chapter. They got a bulk of it, man. I mean, all the tribes been through hell and go through hell, but I'm just saying that, Judah really being here in America was really deprived of like, much culture and shit. Today's culture for Jake is what? Gangbanging, and that's what we're pretty much known for, a lot of negative shit. And that's from the Judah's known for being lazy, all types of shit, man. They call that Jake's a lazy. Come on, man. Judah, they'll call Judah lazy, but Issachar hard working. All right, but guess what? Too, the so-called white man perpetuates that, man, by giving them welfare, all this type of shit. So it's creating a narrative for Judah that, like, that they're like the lowest of the low and shit. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of. That's why our people are lame. That's why they languish. You see what I'm saying? So these prophecies fit us to a T, man. And the greatest man to ever walk the earth, Yahweh Shai, guess what tribe he came from? He came from Judah. So if he was walking this planet Earth, they'll call him a nigger or what, Not that our Lord is a nigger. He didn't act niggerish, because you do have Judites that are just straight up fucking niggerish demons, right? 2/3, all right. But our Lord was like an upright individual, like prime example. When brothers walk around this society, we walk around with respect. We treat others with respect. We be mindful of our surroundings. Because we going off the wisdom of the scriptures, be harmless as doves, right? Well, who started all that? Who's the forefather of all that? Yahweh Shai. We're just an embactus or representation of Yahweh Shai on earth. So if he walked the earth, he'd be walking as a respectful individual, man. But guess what? They'll call him a nigger. It says Hebrews 7:14, for it is evident that our Lord sprang out of the tribe of Judah. Of which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning priesthood, right? Because Yahushua was the king and the priest, and that was two opposite. That was two offices, okay, that was meant to be separate. You had the king Uzziah. He tried to merge the offices, and he got hit with leprosy. So he wasn't supposed to merge those offices together. But when Yahushua went on the cross and the temple was rent, all right, he created a nation of kings and priests, man. All right, so he joined that. You know what I'm saying? So that's why he's called, he's the king of peace, and he's also the priest. Okay. So this whole situation with the space Jews, okay, on the first part, those chariots that you see them popping up, all right, they are coming to deliver the Jews, the real Jews, all right, 12,000 out of each tribe, which is in the elect of the chosen people. That's in the book of Revelations, the 7th chapter. Okay. And they're being piloted by the angels of the Most High. Okay, and then concerning the second part of that space Jews analogy with the celestial luminary Dave Chappelle, okay, talking about the so-called Jew running the planet Earth. Well, guess what? If it's being meant on that analogy, it was orchestrated that way. All right, it was orchestrated that the so-called Jew would be in power and be wicked. And I'm gonna read it. Job 9. I'll put 9 and 12 for Job 9:24 says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. Now, who's the wicked that's running the planet Earth? The so-called white man, but not just the so-called white man, namely the so-called Jew. All right, he's Amalek in the Bible. He's really the chief. All right, of these so-called Edomites. And when you look into the history of a lot of these Edomites, I'm talking about very prominent, powerful Edomites throughout history. All right, whether it be Alexander, he was a so-called Jew. Okay, because what? Because he was man, He's from that same. He pretty much his line. He links up with Agag. Oh, Macedonian. He was Macedonian. There was a lot of so-called Jews in Macedonia. All right, and if you look up the Ptolemies, okay, same thing. You could even look up this chick Cleopatra, Edomite with a big ass hook nose. So-called Jews are known for. So the so-called Jew has always, Amalek has always really been in that power seat amongst these Edomites. He goes back to Esau himself. You see what I'm saying? And the part of the what was promised to Esau was that one of his blessings would be the fatness of the earth. So if you look at the so-called white man, when they come up in power, they pretty much be doing well. All right, but ultimately their goal is to their ultimate destination is to serve us for a period of years in the kingdom, and then ultimately be wiped the fuck off the planet Earth, man, because they're a plague, a parasite. Right? It says the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. Now, who's the judges? Prime example. We talking about it. The angels that pilot chariots, that pilot the UFOs. When you type in angel, they're gonna show you an Edomite with blonde hair and wings and shit. You know. Okay, and the number one judge they covered was the Most High and his son. They got them painted as white. Here, there's a so-called white man. They don't believe in God, right? But if they believe in God, God gotta look like them. You see what I'm saying? Meanwhile, the people that are most spiritual, the Negroes, Latinos, the Native Americans, nah, he don't look like y'all. Y'all gotta worship this long hair, cracker, man. You know what I'm saying? Which is nothing but Cesare Borgia, right, of the Borgian family. During the Renaissance, they took down all the black icons, all the dark skin icons, and put up images of themselves, man. See? It says he covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he? So who else is doing this, man? Who else is? Did the so-called Chinese call themselves the Most High and the Lord? You know, even them, even though we have same characteristics as the so-called Africans, even they ain't do that. They got their own damn gods. See what I'm saying? So the so-called white man has done this madness, man. Okay, so he has called himself a Jew and waged war with all and tax the shit out of all people on the planet Earth. But it's again that fits back in prophecy because all this warring that the so-called white man is doing over there in the Middle East and all the strife that he's causing on planet Earth is going to lead to that third world war, all right, which is a part of prophecy, all right, which is going to pretty much be the closing or curtain call on America, man. You know, so at the end of the day, this man is playing into the Most High's prophecies. Okay? Isaiah 55 and 11. These words that the Most High put in this Bible shall not return void. Alright, that was my response to Dave Chappelle's Space Jews. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Racha Kodash. The belongs to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which you well. Salutations to the whole elect out there. You Akim to Zadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.